Carolyn Doobie here. What's the play for today? Today I'm playing with Gel Press's puzzle piece plate, and I'm going to use one little plate to make a whole bunch of pattern. I'm going to be printing onto a t-shirt. In fact, this exact shirt is what you're going to see me make, and you'll see how using a gel plate to do this gives you an interesting pattern without having to do any extra work. I'll show you how to mix up the paint to turn regular paint into fabric paint, as well as some tips and tricks that are just frankly so easy, that make this so easy to do. So check it all out in today's video. The first thing we're going to do is create some fabric paint. And I'm going to take regular acrylic paint and turn it into a fabric paint. And of course, if you happen to have fabric paint, you absolutely can do that with this. I just don't happen to have any. I prefer to mix mine up. What I'm doing is putting some acrylic paint into a tube, and I'm not measuring it carefully or anything. I'm just squirting some of it in there, some of it more gracefully than others. And I chose these two colors because they're similar but not exact. And that'll give me some nice variation when I'm making the print. So yeah, and this one won't even go down in the bottle. There, finally, it's going down in there. Now, right now, it's just paint, and I'm gonna add a textile medium to it. And the ratio is 1:1. For those who like to measure, they can absolutely measure it out. Me, I like to take the eyeball method and just kind of mark about where double would be so I know how far I'm gonna fill it up. This is a relatively forgiving thing, so you don't have to be that precise with it. Now it's just a matter of taking the textile medium, and this one's from Golden, it's called GAC 900, and simply squirting it in there until it hits that fill line that I drew with the Sharpie marker. Then comes the hardest part, and that is to shake it all up. Make sure the caps are on securely. Yes, I do know that from experience that it does not go well. And then you simply shake it until everything's mixed together. Just a note for you that paints that are a little more fluid or runny are easier to mix than ones that are really thick. Well, let's talk about the t-shirt now. I've got a piece of plastic tucked in here inside the shirt. That way, none of the paint from one side bleeds through to the other. And you can also use cardboard, paper, whatever you've got. You just might want to stick something in there to keep things from bleeding through. Now, in a perfect world, I would have pre-washed this shirt, made sure there were no wrinkles in it, and clearly by looking at this, yeah, this isn't a perfect world. In a moment, you'll see how some of these wrinkles are actually handy, but the ones that are from the other side of the shirt where it's really wrinkled up from the other side, that's what I'm trying to smooth out here. Now, right along the bottom, you'll see that long wrinkle from where it was folded. That is going to help me out. You see, I'm going to use that to line up the first row of puzzle pieces so that everything turns out nice and straight. Now that everything's set up, it's time to start printing onto this t-shirt. So I've got the puzzle piece gel press plate here, and I've got it on a Joggles clear acrylic mount. That'll make it easier to do this. And then you simply put some paint on the plate and brayer it around. Now, exactly how much paint to put on there? Doesn't matter. Put whatever amount you like. You'll see me do a little, you'll see me do a lot. The thing to watch out for, though, is what I just did there was smearing some of it on the acrylic plate. If that happens, you simply just wipe it off. If you get your first row lined up, then all the rest of the rows stay in line. So that's why I'm going to use that wrinkle from the fold at the factory on this, and I'm going to put that first piece down there. That's going to give me a guide to make sure I'm going in about a level direction going across this without me having to do any measuring or thinking and that kind of stuff. I'm going to take the easy way with it. Now on this one, I put a lot of paint. Wasn't intentional, but what a great opportunity to show you what it looks like when there's a lot more paint. Having more paint on there will change how the print looks. And you'll see it especially in comparison to that first one that I did. So I'm going to put this on here and I'll talk more about why I'm making the positioning choices that I am. And by the way, it's really forgiving in just a couple of moments. But now I'm going to get this one on here. And as I push it down, I've lined it up with the puzzle piece that was before it. And then also kind of double checking it along that fold line going along. You're going to see that it's a much stronger, darker print than the first one. And that will give you lots of variation as you're doing this because how much paint you use changes how it looks on the fabric. So that means when you're doing this, you can use a little or a lot of paint. And if you do one or the other unintentionally, it's just going to add to the variation, the interest that comes together when this whole thing is filled in. As I'm putting the paint on the plate, they look very similar, but when you see them side by side, you'll notice that I'm basically alternating between these two shades of teal or turquoise that I'm using. And yeah, there are even times that I'll put both of them on the plate, a little like half drop of each one, and that way I get even more variation throughout this. This is going to be a very random looking pattern when I'm done, so I don't mind if something doesn't print perfectly or if there's a lot of paint or a small amount of paint. What I'm just looking for is a lot of variation. As I'm putting the puzzle piece down, you might have noticed that I'm sometimes turning it one way, sometimes turning another way. Is there a big reason for that? Well, not really. It's more just I kind of don't want them to all look like they're going the exact same way. And the way this puzzle piece is designed makes it very, very useful for filling in. Doing this randomly the way I am, of just sometimes pointing it down, sometimes pointing it up, you would think after doing this entire shirt that I would get into a position I'd kind of get locked in somewhere where it's not going to fit. But nope. The whole way through, it completely fits. I've sped up the camera here because it's basically the same thing over and over again. Put some paint on the puzzle piece plate and then put it on the shirt, put some more paint on it, and repeat and repeat and repeat until everything is filled in as much as you want to do. Now, I chose to fill the entire shirt, front, back, everywhere. And of course, when you're doing this, you can do the entire shirt or part of the shirt or just a row of it along the front or the back or the bottom or the top, whatever you want to do. You have all that creative freedom. When you're doing a large area, that's a big flat area like the back or the front, this all makes perfect sense. And even for the sides, you simply just keep working your way around the side till you get around to the front. But when you come to the arms, when you come to those areas that are not just nice rectangular spaces, you might run into a situation where you do get into a little bit of a pickle where things don't line up. Not because the puzzle piece isn't turned or rotated the right way, but because you literally end up with these bizarre little pieces of space because shirts are not actually square and rectangular in every way. You've got some different curves in it. So as I finish up this row here, as you've got an idea of how this looks, I also want to show you how easy it is to get yourself out of some of the pickles that might happen while you're doing this. Now here I am up at the top of the sleeve, and coming from the front to the back, I've got this strange triangular kind of shape there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a lighter round of paint on here. That way it doesn't stand out too strongly. And as I put this down, I'm going to fit it as best I can on here in this triangular space. It's going to go a little bit bigger than what it is, and there are going to be some little white areas. Then I'm going to basically do the ghost print just in those to kind of fill in any area that has that bright white kind of standing out. And you can do that anywhere when you get to the very end of something. If you find that you've got an oddball shape or size kind of thing left, as long as I'm here, I'm going to show you what I do for the sleeve. On the front side of it, it came out really nicely. And on the back side, I'm going to get some of those weird shape parts of it. So what I'm going to do here, you can use a piece of paper, like I said earlier, plastic, paper, a piece of cardboard. When I'm working in the arms, it's nice to have something a little firmer, just because it helps kind of control where things are going and curve around the edges kind of thing. So I like to use a piece of cardboard here. And you can definitely see how there's an angle kind of going on there. Not going to be a problem. It's not going to stand out and nobody's going to notice it. You're going to do it just like you did going straight across stuff. You put that paint on the plate and then you line it up as best you can. So as I find the spot where it looks like the puzzle piece fits, I'm going to fill in that spot. And that one filled in pretty nicely. But now I've got this spot and it's not going to fit the puzzle piece the way it is. But like you saw earlier, it doesn't really have to. The back of the sleeve, the last part of it, that's when things kind of just sort of get squeezed in as best I can. It's also an area where things don't really stand out. People really aren't looking that carefully at your sleeve, especially the undersleeve in your armpit. At least I hope people aren't really looking at your armpit a whole lot when you're wearing a shirt. So I'm going to put this one on here, and you can see how it doesn't perfectly fit down at the bottom. I've got that gap there. Well, guess what? We'll just fill that in just like I did the other one. Now, again, bizarre little piece kind of thing going on here. And so I'm going to do a light amount of paint because the softer amounts just blend a little bit more. Things aren't as noticeable. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing the sleeves, or if there's anywhere where you have to sort of patch stuff in like what I'm doing here, is that when you're wearing it, it's moving, it's fitting around a three-dimensional shape, so that these things really don't stand out in the same way they do when they're completely flat. And by the way, this isn't the only way that you can use a gel press plate. There are lots and lots of ways to do them. If you'd like more ideas on how to use them, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as Gel Press has another video out. Well, let's take a look at the front of the shirt once it's all done. You can see all those pieces playing together. Now, I did have some areas that had some very bright white in between some of the puzzle pieces where I kind of went quickly. And I really like that clear line there. I love how that adds just a little bit of white to it. But let's say you don't. Let's say you don't want that to be there. This is extremely forgiving because by just putting basically a ghost print right over that white, what you're doing is covering it up, softening it down, very much like what we were doing on the arms or that kind of thing. So what does the t-shirt look like once it's all complete? Well, here it is. This is the entire thing, and there's color and pattern on the front, the back, all the way around on this thing, and suddenly a very cheap t-shirt has become a whole lot of fun. So next time you happen to run across a really cheap t-shirt, or if you've got an old white t-shirt in your stash already, have some fun gel pressing on and turn it into something that's uniquely you. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.